Hey guys, today I'll be talking to you guys about the book that was assigned to me, which is The New Jim Crow Law: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander, who is a civil rights lawyer and a highly acclaimed legal scholar. What I had expected this book to be was a fictional story with like some characters, a plot, an ending, with maybe some subtopics of like politics or some history on Jim Crow, but it ended up being different. It's actually a non-fictional, and it has like some true facts in there. And you know, the most important thing to take away from this book would be to think outside the box, look around you, put yourself in other shoes, look at things from a different perspective, and don't be blind with the things that are going on currently in the United States. What I made the main thesis out to be was that incarceration is a new racial oppression with African Americans, especially. Um, One of the issues that the author describes is racial discrimination still being present in the United States. Um, she argues that people still face prejudice. She includes the war on drugs, which is the main culprit, more likely to imprison them for nonviolent offenses. And she talks about like how after they're released from prison, they have difficult finding jobs because of background checks, as well as getting their rights to vote taken away, which is kind of like a flashback to the past, before civil rights movements. Michelle Alexander in this book uses some important court cases from the past, such as Brown versus Board of Education, which is a key case in the civil rights movement around the Martin Luther King era. I think the author proposes to challenge civil rights as a community, um, to be able to voice out a new movement for racial justice in America, to speak out on the injustices with certain races. She also talks about how police have been militarized, and um, some proof of this would be maybe like police brutality that we see nowadays in the news with like cops um, killing African Americans or mistaking them for criminals, or even um, white shooting blacks. We see stuff like this in the news. To be honest, I really just finished the book like about a week and a half ago. But I'm glad I got the opportunity to have this book introduced to me. Um, it wasn't really entertaining, but rather informative, and it made you look at things in a different perspective. Um, I think my favorite chapter would be the first one because it gave like a reminder or like a little short history lesson on past events um, with like civil rights, such as slavery and the Jim Crow laws. Um, Overall, the book was easy to read. It didn't have any big words that I couldn't even pronounce, um, or it didn't have like plot twist or anything. So it was pretty straightforward. What I found important is that racial caste-style systems still exist nowadays. The only thing is that it's not really exposed. You don't see it in a lot of the media, except for like um, police brutality. But this book is good to point out like every like detail and like the history, like how everything builds up to what we have now with civil rights and African Americans. I don't think I could really disagree with any aspects that are introduced in the book, except for maybe like the war on drugs, because like it's not the only casting system that that they use for racial oppression. Like they also use like gang involvement. Like they'll blame African Americans for like being related to gangs, or like whenever somebody is um, shot up in a neighborhood, the first people that they look at is African Americans, because it's a stereotype that they're involved in gangs all the time. I'm not sure the author is aware of like other casting systems. Maybe she just wanted to focus on the war on drugs because it's the most anticipated um, system that we see nowadays. You know, drugs are everywhere, and they're sadly becoming a bigger problem in the United States. Throughout the, what was it, like 5 or 4 weeks that I was reading this book, um, it made me, every time I would get into this book, it would make me put myself in the shoes of African American, Like, I'm obviously not African American, but like it made me angry, just like the things that happen that we don't really know about or talk about. They're just like hidden in a corner. And um, reading this book, it made me like see things in a different perspective. Like is the United States like really the land of the free, or does freedom really exist here? The role that the text might play in informing policy decisions would be maybe like be more careful with the way that they do things within the criminal justice system. This comes down to courts, law enforcement, things like that. Um, I think it could impact them on being more open-minded. Like maybe whenever a crime occurs, or someone gets killed, like don't focus on black communities. It could be like anybody, not just because they're African American means that they did the crime, or that you know that's where you're gonna find your criminal. Another thing would be to eliminate being biased. Like be open minded. Don't just think one thing about. All right, guys. So in conclusion to the book, mass incarceration is a new racial caste style system using war on drugs as an oppression for African Americans. Um, I don't think the book could improve on anything. Like it was pretty straightforward with facts. It's easy to read. Um, if anything, I think it could improve in like explaining the facts, like expanding on them, not just cherry picking random facts, um, and go more into detail with them. The relevancy of The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander to our course would be the history of civil rights, um, and you know race, and how things like that contribute to how um, things are perceived by others. Um, Alright, guys, thanks for watching my review slash information on The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Um, I hope to learn from your guys' book that was chosen. Um, yeah, thank you.